I'm not a second-generation rich kid. But I drive a Ferrari. My family doesn't have billions in assets. But I have more money than I can spend. I'm Caleb. I have one job description. Keep Wall Street business giant Eleanor stress-free and satisfied. Physically, my hourly rate makes lawyers weep. And I live in luxury that most people only see on TV. But the golden handcuffs are tight. I'm on standby 24/7, my body is her gym. Her stress ball or amusement park. One Tuesday night, Eleanor hit the shower. After a particularly grueling board meeting that ended in our bedroom. I was catching my breath. Doing a few crunches on the edge of the custom Italian mattress. To keep the blood flowing. I checked my ABS in the vanity mirror. Perfect symmetry, it's part of the contract. Suddenly, her work phone on the nightstand buzzed. It wasn't her business line. It was the private one. Curiosity killed the cat. But boredom makes you do stupid but things. I glanced at the screen. That was wild, baby. When can I get back inside you? My blood ran cold. Eleanor had a side piece. I'm the side piece, she has a side piece. I placed the phone back down with surgical precision. My hands were steady, deep down. A bitter laugh bubbled up. Poor Eleanor, running an empire is hard work. Why shouldn't she outsource her entertainment to more than one vendor? She exited the bathroom wrapped in silk smelling of lavender and power. Caleb, she commanded softly. Dry my hair, yes, ma'am. I picked up the dryer, smiling my trademark vacant pretty boy smile. The next morning, Eleanor was radiant. She looked like she'd eaten a soul for breakfast. Probably mine or maybe the guy from the text message. She sat on the edge of the bed. Sliding sheer black stockings up her impossibly long legs. She tossed an American Express Centurion card onto the duvet. I have the charity ball at the Met tomorrow. You're my +1, buy a new tux. Make sure you don't embarrass me. Understood, Miss St. James. I grinned, snatching the black metal card before she could stand. I pulled her down for a rough breath-stealing kiss. I played the role of the obsessed lover perfectly. She smirked, patted my cheek like I was a golden retriever. And walked out to her waiting private elevator. Once she was gone, my face dropped. The smile vanished. I slumped back onto the pillows. Jealousy? Please. I'm a professional, I don't catch feelings. I catch checks, but Eleanor wasn't just a boss. She was intoxicating. There was a demon in the boardroom and a succubus in the bedroom. But I'm not stupid, this ride has an expiration date. I spent the afternoon burning a hole in her credit card at Tom Ford. Getting fitted for a suit. That cost more than my foster parents made in a decade. By evening, I wanted a drink. A real drink, not the expensive champagne Eleanor kept in the fridge. I texted Marcus. We met at the Viper Room. Heavily disguised, Marcus. A failed actor turned bartender. Laughed as I downed a tequila shot. So the Ice Queen let you off the leash, Marcus? Gee, weird. Stealing a lime wedge, she's prepping for a merger. I lied, signaling for another round. Busy week, Marcus leaned in. His expression dropping the joke. Bullshit, man. The word on the street isn't a merger. It's a marriage. My hand froze halfway to my mouth. What you didn't hear? The St. James family is finalizing a union with the Dude Pond. Shipping heir, old money marrying new money. It's gonna be the wedding of the century, Caleb. She's locking down a husband. The tequila suddenly tasted like battery acid. Start talking, I growled. Engagement party is being planned. Rumor is she's cleaning house before the ring goes on. You know what that means, right? You're getting severed, hope you saved your cash. Pretty boy, I stared at the neon lights reflecting off the wet bar. A husband, the text message, baby. When can I get back inside you? It wasn't a random hookup. It was the fiancé, a heavy. Sickening feeling settled in my gut. We had a contract, no emotional attachments. I was just a barrier against the gold diggers. A warm body for cold nights. If she's marrying DuPont, I'm trash. I need some air, I muttered. Tossing cash on the bar, I shoved through the sweaty, grinding bodies on the dance floor needing nicotine. The VIP section of the Viper Room is elevated overlooking the peasants. As I tried to slip past the velvet rope toward the back exit, I looked up and there she was. Eleanor, not in a business suit. She was wearing a dress that was basically black paint. Sprayed over her curves, it had a slit that went up to her hip. She was flanked by men in suits. They were laughing, toasting her. She was throwing her head back, laughing. A genuine laugh I rarely heard. And next to her, with his hand possessively on her lower back, was a substantial-looking blonde guy. Chiseled jaw, Patrick Felipe. Watched Pong, I gripped my unlit cigarette so hard it snapped. So this is the business meeting. Eleanor turned her head, scanning the crowd. Her eyes sharp as a hawk, swept over the area. I ducked instinctively. I'm supposed to be at home tucked in bed like a good little toy. If she sees me here, I'm finished. I scrambled toward the back alley exit. Hard hammering, I needed to leave now. I pushed open the heavy steel door. Spilling out into the damp, trash-filled alleyway, the bass from the club was muffled here. I leaned against the brick wall, lighting a fresh cigarette with shaking hands. 3 years, I'd given her 3 years of absolute obedience. And I was finding out about her. Wedding from a bartender? Get off me. A shrill scream cut through my pity party. Check that, 2 guys. Looking like frat brothers on steroids. Were dragging a girl toward a darkened SUV. Ideally, the girl was wasted. Barely able to stand, relax, honey. One guy sneered, groping her chest. We're just having an after party. I sighed, not my business. I have my own problems, but the girl's eyes rolled back, terrified. I snapped my cigarette toward the nearest guy. The burning tip hit his eye. Damn, he howled. Releasing me instantly, let her go. I said, voice flat. Who do you think you are, Batman? The second guy stepped up. Swinging a wild punch, I didn't even blink. I sidestepped, grabbed his wrist and twisted until something snapped. He howled, I drove a knee into his solar plexus, feeling him collapse like a sack of potatoes. The first guy charged. I swept his leg and kicked him square in the ribs while he was down. Violence is messy, but it's honest. Unlike Eleanor, the girl slumped against the wall, sobbing. I called a cab on my phone. Get in, lock the doors. I told her as it pulled up. As I turned around to wipe a smudge of blood off my knuckle, I saw a silhouette standing by the club's rear exit. The smell of expensive perfume hit me first. Caleb, her voice was like liquid nitrogen. Eleanor was standing there. Her arms crossed the side. Slit of her dress revealing that lethal leg. Playing the hero, she asked. Her eyes darting from the beaten men to my face. I took a step closer, the alley light cast shadows on her face. I thought you were in bed. I can explain, I started using my best cocky teenager voice. He didn't let me finish. She grabbed my tie and yanked me down to her level. Staring into my eyes, in the car. Her Maybach was idling at the end of the alley. The ride home was suffocating. The driver's partition was up. Eleanor sat on the leather bench staring at her phone. Suddenly, she tossed the phone aside and lunged at me. It wasn't a hug, it was a claim. She bit my lip hard enough to draw blood. Her hands were everywhere. Tearing at my shirt, gripping my belt. You disobeyed me, she whispered against my neck. Her hands sliding dangerously lower. You lied to me, I shut up. She pushed me back against the door. Tonight you earn your forgive. I'm going to use you until you can't walk. And God help me, I let her. It wasn't love, it was a transaction. It was punishment, it was primal rage wrapped in lust. She wrote me like she was trying to erase a memory. Or maybe trying to forget who she was becoming. By the time we got back to the penthouse, I was exhausted. I carried her to the master suite. She was asleep before her head hit the pillow. Mascara slightly smudged. I sat on the edge of the bed watching her chest rise and fall. She looked innocent, like an angel. A deceitful, engaged angel. Her phone buzzed again on the nightstand. DuPont family, the dress fittings are scheduled for Thursday in Paris. Don't be late, I stared at the screen. Then another message from her assistant. Contracts are ready. The prenup with DuPont basically guarantees the merger. Congratulations, Mrs. DuPont-to-be. I looked back at Eleanor. I wasn't a boyfriend, I wasn't even a lover, really. I was a loose end. A toy she kept on the shelf until the real owner came home. I quietly stood up. I walked to the walk-in closet and pulled out a duffel bag. I didn't pack the suits she bought. I didn't take the watches. I took my own hoodies, my worn-out sneakers, and the wad of cash I'd been squirreling away for 3 years. I checked my bank account on my phone. The balance was high, very high. Time to cash out, I whispered to the empty room. I walked back to where she slept and placed the black Centurion card on the nightstand. Next to her phone, goodbye. Mississippi St. James, I closed the door softly. The penthouse loop was broken. The elevator ride down felt different this time. Didn't feel like I was leaving home. It felt like I was escaping. Rain in Queens hits different than the rain on the Upper East Side. In Manhattan, rain is an inconvenience that gets wiped away by doormen. In Queens, it smells like wet asphalt and old garbage. I checked into a motel that charged by the hour. But let me pay for a week up front in cash. I threw my bag on the bed. The mattress sagged in the middle. And the sheets smelled like bleach and someone else's bad decisions. It was a far cry from the 1,000 thread count. Egyptian cotton I woke up on. This morning, I sat in the dark. staring at the blinking red light of the smoke detector actor. My body hurt, not from the fight at the club, but from her. My back still stung from where her nails had dug in. My lip was still swollen from her bite. It was a physical withdrawal. I was addicted to the toxicity. I pulled out a burner phone I bought at a bodega on the way over. I had tossed my old iPhone into a trash can on Fifth Avenue. I shouldn't have turned it on. But I'm a masochist. I dialed my old number just to see if she noticed. I checked the cloud account linked to my old iPad, which I still had in my bag. Notifications were flooding in. 10 a.m., where are you? The driver is waiting. 10 a.m., pick up the phone, Caleb. This isn't funny. 11:00 am. I found the card. You think you can buy your freedom. 12 p.m., you belong to me. If you don't walk through that door in 1 hour, I will burn this city down to find you. 1 p.m. I'm tracking the iPad's IP, Caleb. You have 10 minutes to run before my security team kicks the door off its hinges. I stared at the glowing screen of the tablet. My blood ran cold, then immediately boiled. I wasn't dealing with a scorned girlfriend. I was dealing with a billionaire who viewed the world as a chessboard and me as her stolen queen. I didn't panic. I grabbed the iPad, brought it down hard against the motel room's rusted cast iron radiator, and watched the screen spider web into a dead, black void. I tossed the bent metal into the trash can, grabbed my duffel bag, and walked out into the relentless Queen's reign. I was blocks away, sitting in the back of a damp, rattling subway car headed deeper into Brooklyn, when my burner phone buzzed. I hadn't given this number to anyone. Did you really think a burner from a bodega on Astoria Boulevard would hide you? I own the telecom provider, Caleb. I ripped the battery out of the phone and dropped the pieces onto the sticky subway floor. She was cornering me. For 3 years, I had played the vacant, pretty boy. I let her dress me, command me, and use me to burn off the stress of running a global empire. What Eleanor St. James didn't realize was that while she was busy ruling the world, I was taking notes. I knew how she thought. I knew the aggressive, scorched earth tactics she used in hostile takeovers. And right now, I was the hostile takeover. I needed cash. The millions I had saved were sitting in a high-yield account under my name. I walked into a grimy local bank branch in Bedford-Stuyvesant and slid my debit card into the ATM. Account frozen. Please contact your branch. I let out a harsh, bitter laugh. Of course she froze it. She was cutting off my oxygen. She wanted me starved, desperate, and crawling back to the penthouse on my knees, begging to be put back on my leash. But I'm a foster kid from the bad side of Chicago. I was surviving on scraps before she was even a blip on my radar, and more importantly, I wasn't stupid. 2 years ago, after a particularly vicious argument where she reminded me how easily she could erase me, I started a shadow fund. I funneled a portion of my hourly rate into an offshore LLC registered under a fake name in the Caymans, completely detached from my social security number. It wasn't billionaire money, but it was enough to make me dangerous. I spent the next 3 days as a ghost. I paid in cash, slept in windowless basement apartments in Chinatown, and used public library computers with encrypted browsers. I knew her schedule. The Met Gala was Friday. The DuPont merger was set to be announced on Monday. Patrick DuPont, the blonde, chiseled heir I saw her with at the Viper Room, shipping money, old, arrogant, and notoriously reckless. I started digging. When you're the silent toy in the corner of a billionaire's penthouse, you overhear things. I remembered a phone call Eleanor had a year ago with her fixers, something about DuPont shipping containers out of Macau and a massive cover-up involving offshore gambling debts. I spent 48 hours straight on the dark web, fueled by cheap coffee and pure, unadulterated spite. I hired a disgraced corporate hacker I used to buy Adderall from back in my brief college days. It cost me 50 grand from my offshore stash, but by Thursday night, I had it. Patrick DuPont wasn't just old money, he was broke money. He owed over $100 million to a Macanese syndicate. The merger with Eleanor's company wasn't a strategic alliance, it was a bailout. He was marrying her to save his kneecaps, and he was planning to leverage St. James' assets to do it. Eleanor didn't know. She was ruthless, but she was arrogant. She assumed no one would dare try to play her. I printed the documents, slipping them into a sleek black leather folder. She wanted me to buy a tux. Fine. I went to a bespoke tailor in Soho who owed me a favor for keeping his name out of a scandal 2 years ago. I didn't buy the standard black penguin suit. I bought a midnight blue velvet smoking jacket, razor-sharp black trousers, and a Patek Philippe watch from a pawnbroker that cost me another 100 grand. When I looked in the mirror, the vacant boy toy was gone, the golden retriever was dead, a wolf stared back. Friday night, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The paparazzi flashes were blinding, a strobe light sea of diamonds, silk, and old money. I didn't have an invitation, but I didn't need one. I knew Eleanor's head of security, a giant ex-Mossad guy named Gideon. I had saved Gideon's job once when Eleanor wanted him fired over a minor breach. I found Gideon by the service entrance. He tensed, his hand instinctively going to his earpiece. "Don't do it, Gid," I said softly, stepping out of the shadows. He stared at me, his eyes widening slightly. "Caleb, are you insane? She has half the NYPD looking for you. She hasn't slept in 4 days. The penthouse looks like a war zone. Let me in. She'll kill me, then she'll kill you." I'm here to save her empire, I said, my voice dead calm. I patted the leather folder under my jacket. DuPont is a parasite. If she signs those papers on Monday, she loses the company in 2 years. You know she'll thank you later. Gideon hesitated. He looked at my eyes, searching for the subservient kid he used to mock. He didn't find him. He stepped aside. Temple of Dinder. She's doing press near the reflecting pool. If this goes sideways, I never saw you. I slipped inside. The gala was a suffocating display of excess. Waiters in white gloves floated past with trays of champagne. I weaved through the elite of New York, invisible in my elegance. Then I saw her. She was standing near the ancient Egyptian ruins, wearing a custom Schiaparelli gown that looked like spun gold and liquid blood. She was breathtaking, but her eyes were hollow. The sharp, terrifying spark that usually radiated from her was dimmed. She was gripping her champagne flute so tightly her knuckles were white. Beside her was Patrick DuPont, looking like a Ralph Lauren model, his hand resting possessively on her waist. My waist. A surge of primal, violent jealousy spiked in my chest, but I forced it down. Cold execution, that was the play. I grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray and walked straight into the lion's den. The crowd naturally parted for me. Confidence is the ultimate camouflage. Miss St. James, I said, my voice cutting through the dull roar of the room. Eleanor froze, her entire body locked up. Slowly, she turned. When her eyes met mine, I saw a terrifying cocktail of emotions flash across her face. Shock, relief, pure rage, and a hunger so dark it could have swallowed the room. Caleb, she breathed. It was barely a whisper, but it carried across the space between us. Patrick turned, looking me up and down with a condescending sneer. Who is this? One of your assistants, Elle? I didn't look at Patrick. I kept my eyes locked on Eleanor. You told me to buy a new tux and be your +1. Apologies for being late. Traffic in Queens is a nightmare. Eleanor's chest heaved. She took a step toward me, her eyes darting to the heavy security guards closing in. She raised a single, manicured finger, halting them in their tracks. Patrick, Eleanor said, her voice dropping into that terrifying, liquid nitrogen register, give us a moment. Excuse me? Patrick scoffed. Elle, the press is taking photos. I said, leave us. She didn't look at him. She was staring at me like a starving predator looking at a steak. Patrick flushed with anger but stepped back, muttering something under his breath. Eleanor closed the distance between us. We were inches apart, the scent of her, lavender, expensive musk, and pure power, wrapped around my throat. I froze your accounts, she whispered, her voice shaking with restrained fury. I grounded your passport, I put a bounty on your head, and you walk into the Met Gala looking like James Bond? You underestimated me, Eleanor, you always do. You belong in my bed, she hissed, her eyes dropping to my lips, not playing dress up. I don't belong to anyone, I said smoothly. I stepped closer, entirely invading her personal space, feeling her breath hitch, but you're about to belong to the Macanese triad. Her brow furrowed. What the hell are you talking about? I pulled the black leather folder from inside my jacket and pressed it against her chest. Page 3, your golden boy, Patrick, is drowning in $100 million of offshore syndicate debt. He's using the merger to liquidate your subsidiaries in Southeast Asia to pay them off. He's not a partner, Eleanor, he's a parasite. Eleanor's eyes flicked from my face to the folder. She opened it. I watched her read, her brilliant mind processing the bank transfers, the encrypted messages, the undeniable proof of DuPont's fraud. The vulnerability I had seen in her moments ago vanished, replaced instantly by the ruthless, bloodthirsty CEO I knew so well. She snapped the folder shut. Her jaw was clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. Why are you showing me this? She asked softly. You ran away. You hated me. You could have let him bleed me dry. Because, I leaned in, my lips brushing the shell of her ear. If anyone is going to ruin you, it's going to be me. A shiver ran down her spine. I felt it. Suddenly, a heavy hand grabbed my shoulder and violently yanked me backward. It was Patrick. He had lost his patience. Listen to me, you little street trash, Patrick snarled, stepping into my face. I don't know what lies you're feeding my fiancé, but you're going to turn around and walk out of here before I have my guys break your legs. I looked at the hand he had on my velvet jacket, then I looked at his face. Take your hand off me, I said, my voice dead. Or what, pretty boy? Patrick sneered. I didn't think. The muscle memory from the alleyway took over. I grabbed his wrist, twisted it sharply, and drove the heel of my palm upward, catching him right under the chin. It wasn't enough to kill him, but it was enough to send a shockwave through his skull. Patrick stumbled backward, crashing into a tray of champagne glasses. The shattering of crystal echoed through the Temple of Dinder. Gasps erupted from the billionaires around us. Paparazzi flashes went into a frenzy. Security swarmed. Stand down. Eleanor's voice cracked like a whip. It was a roar that silenced the room. The guards froze. Patrick was on the floor, clutching his bleeding jaw, looking up in shock. Eleanor. Have this animal arrested. Eleanor looked down at him. She looked at the black folder in her hand, then at the pathetic, bleeding heir on the floor, her lip curled in absolute disgust. The merger is off, Patrick, she said coldly. What? You can't do that. The board will read the dossier I'm sending them in 5 minutes regarding your $100 million syndicate debt. She cut him off. her voice echoing in the dead silent room. If you ever approach me, my company, or, she paused, her eyes shifting to me, my partner again, I won't just ruin your company, I'll hand you over to the Maccanees myself, get out of my sight. Patrick went pale, he scrambled up, humiliated, ruined, and bolted for the exit. The silence in the room was deafening. Eleanor turned to her head of PR, who was standing nearby looking pale. Draft a press release. The St. James DuPont merger is cancelled due to irreconcilable ethical breaches on the part of DuPont Industries, and tell the band to start playing again. She turned back to me, the fury was gone, in its place was something much more dangerous, respect. Walk with me, she commanded. She didn't wait for my answer, she turned and strode toward the private, restricted corridors of the museum. I followed her, leaving the chaos behind. We entered a dimly lit gallery of Renaissance art, the heavy oak doors clicked shut, plunging us into silence. She didn't say a word, she dropped the folder on a 16th century table, turned, grabbed my lapels, and slammed me back against a marble pillar. Her mouth crashed onto mine. It wasn't like the alleyway, it wasn't punishment, it was desperation, it was a collision of power. I kissed her back with equal violence, my hands tangling in her hair, ruining the perfect updo, my teeth catching her lower lip. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily in the dark. You hacked my life, she whispered, her eyes blazing, you played me. I leveled the playing field, I corrected her, smoothing my jacket. I told you, Eleanor, the ride had an expiration date, I'm not a toy you keep on the shelf. She stared at me, her chest heaving against her golden dress. So what are you, Caleb? Because right now, you're an unemployed, rogue asset who just cost me a $10 billion merger. I saved you a $10 billion loss, you owe me. I stepped forward, backing her against the edge of the antique table. The golden handcuffs are off, the contract is shredded. Is that right? She breathed, a dangerous smirk playing on her lips. Then what do you want? I want the seat at the table, I said, my voice low, dropping the vacant smile for good. I'm not your secret, I'm not your stress ball, I'm your equal. I run your shadow ops, I handle the trash like DuPont, you keep the empire clean, and I protect your blind spots. And in the bedroom I leaned in, my voice dropping to a gravelly whisper, I don't wait for your orders anymore. Eleanor Street, James, the woman who made Wall Street titans bleed, looked up at me, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw her submit. You think you can handle me? She challenged, though her voice betrayed a tremor of pure adrenaline. I'm the only one who can. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the heavy, black Centurion Amex card she had thrown at me days ago, and slipped it down the plunging neckline of her dress. Keep your money, Eleanor, I have my own. She laughed. It wasn't the bitter, polite laugh of the boardroom, it was the raw, genuine laugh I had heard at the Viper Room, but this time, it was mine. My car is waiting, she said, her eyes darkening as she grabbed my hand, her grip like a vice. Let's go home. We walked out of the museum together, past the flashing cameras, past the whispers of the elite. I didn't walk a step behind her, I walked right beside her. The rain had stopped in Manhattan, as we slid into the back of the Maybach and the privacy partition rose, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold. The game hadn't ended, it had just evolved. I wasn't a second-generation rich kid, I didn't have billions in assets. But I had the queen, and the empire was ours.